for the next segment of today's program, we are going to address what I think is probably the elephant in the room, and that is the topic of financing your legal education. For many law students, myself included, this is the topic that was always lurking in the back of my mind, but simultaneously the one that I wanted to avoid talking about the most. And while admittedly this topic may not be as exciting as hearing from our alumni or our students, it is a critical component to your path to law school and success upon graduating. And so it's something that we definitely need to address. Law school is going to likely be one of the largest investments that you're going to make in your life. But the good news is that now, more so than ever, there are resources that can help you navigate this investment to make sure you are the most informed, and certainly at the very least more informed than I was when I embarked on this process. One such resource that is out there and available for pre-law and law students is a nonprofit institution that goes by the name of AccessLex. And they are committed to increasing financial literacy amongst pre-law and law students. And today I have the honor of turning the mic and the screen over to AccessLex's Northeast Regional Director, Ashley Norwood-Struppa, who's going to guide us through a conversation, hopefully the first of many for you all, about financial literacy for law school students. So Ashley, take it away.
Thanks, Lauren, and thanks everyone for joining. I'm very happy to speak with you today. If I could possibly get screen sharing rights, that would be very appreciated. But I just want to give you a quick introduction of who I am. As Lauren mentioned, I work for AccessLex Institute, and we are a nonprofit organization that we focus specifically on law school students and their financial education. We want you to feel empowered about your finances before you leave school. And so we have developed our Max and Max pre-law programs with that in mind. It's specifically designed to help you into law school, through law school, and help you transition into your professional career through financial education. And so the first step for us is how you finance it, how you budget for it, and how you plan for it. I'm going to be going through this presentation, and it's really just a quick appetizer of what the Max Pre-Law program has to offer for you. And you never pay for anything through Max or Max Pre-Law, so don't be concerned about that. We are a completely free resource, and we partner with about 190 of the ABA accredited law schools in the country. At the end, I'll also show you how you can register for an account so you can get more information about the Max Pre-Law program, and just do the presentations that we have so that you can learn more about it and kind of address that elephant in the room that Lauren mentioned, is how we pay for law school. And the first step is understanding the costs, knowing what your application process is, the types of aid there is, and then student loans. Average law school cost. Does anybody have a guess on what the average law school debt is in the nation? I want to throw in the chat panel. Anybody have a guess? How much do you think that the average student borrows when they graduate? It's about $166,000. $166,000. That means there are people that borrow more. That also means that there are people that borrow less. And when we're talking about the overall cost of law school, it doesn't start the day you walk in the doors. It starts now. You have LSAT or GRE costs that are right around $200. You have other related costs. If you take any of those exam prep courses, they can be up to $1,500. If you have to travel to take any of those exams, that's going to add into the whole overall cost. The application expenses for law school are usually up to $90 each. The cost for credential assembly service is about $195, the CAS. And if you need additional CS reports, they're $45 each. So even before you have stepped inside the door, before you've deposited, you have already spent maybe $2,000. or at least a few $100s on the cost of the exams and your CAS. Now you need to decide where you're going to go. And that's going to cost you money. At least that gets applied to your tuition in the fall, but your deposits are usually going to be $500 to $1,000. They are non-refundable. So when you choose that school, be confident that that's the school you want to go to, so you do not lose that money, that $500 or $1,000. The actual average law school expenses in the country, it's going to depend on what type of school that you go to. The average tuition and fees at a public institution where you are a resident of that state, right around $28,000. If you're a non-resident going to a public institution, right around $42,000. Private, right around $50,000. Doesn't matter if you're in-state or out-of-state. Living expenses, going to vary just a little bit, or it's not very dramatically depending on where you are in the country, but for averages, for public institutions, the other living expenses, those other expenses, those personal expenses, right around $21,000 a year. And then for private institutions, right around $24,000. So you're looking at the average cost of law school between $48,500 all the way up to almost $74,000. Now, there are schools that are more, there are schools that are less, but these are the averages, just so that you're aware. And I give you these numbers not to scare you away. I'm not telling you that law school is too expensive. I'm sharing it so that you are aware, so that you can start preparing now, because there are ways to cover the cost of these loans after you leave school, whether you go into big law and you start out making $200,000, or you start out in government work or working for a nonprofit and you're making $55,000, $60,000 a year. When it comes to the actual costs, those costs I just mentioned to you, those were the averages. That's not necessarily what you are paying. It's the cost, it's the sticker price of the schools. Direct costs, you don't have any say. The school is going to tell you how much you have to pay if you want to go there. Where you do have flexibility is your living and other expenses. I'm not saying that these are easy choices or easy decisions, but you can effectively lower how much you're borrowing by making different decisions on the right side of this column. Food and rent is usually where people spend the most money, especially rent. And I'm not going to tell you to stay in find the least expensive place to live. If you're going to school in an urban area, I want to make sure that you are feeling safe when you go home at night, because there are going to be times when you leave school and it's really late, you might have to walk home. I want you to feel safe. But there is a balance and some choices that you can make. Can you live with a roommate? Can you get a smaller location? If you're on an urban campus, can you pick a location that's further down the bus line, further down the train line, that's less expensive? So there are choices that are involved. Books and supplies, depending on the course that you're taking. Can you rent the books? Can you use ebooks? Can you buy used books? There's all these creative ways that you can start thinking about how to effectively adjust those costs. Because I don't want you to consider budgeting taking the cost of attendance that the school gives you. That's the maximum amount that you can borrow, and just building your budget up to that. I want you to build a budget and make sure that it is lower than that cost of attendance. Now, when you're thinking about how you're going to actually pay for school, there's usually 4 different places. Personal resources. If you have any savings, if the family has anything to help pay it down, you can pay that directly to school. That's obviously interest-free, and you don't have to worry about borrowing anything. Next is grants and scholarships. That's what everybody wants. That's the free money. So start thinking about applying to grants and scholarships, whether it's at the university that you're applying to or outside scholarships. Next, are you going to be working during school? Are you going to be working part-time, going to school part-time? Can you use some of your earnings to at least pay for your living expenses, so that you don't have to borrow for all of those living expenses? And then student loans. It's the devil that we live with, is student loans. You're going to have to live with those You are not alone. Most law school students do take out student loans. And like I said, it's about the average for a class of 20 graduates 2019, 2020 was around $166,000. Now, types of financial aid, there's going to be free options. There's going to be not free options. Scholarships and grants are obviously that free money. It could be need-based aid. So it takes into account your financial need on the FAFSA application. It could also take the way of a merit-based scholarship. So it's based on your academics. There may be opportunities for federal work study. If you may have done that in your undergraduate years, you are given an allotment of money if you work. So it's an award that you actually have to work towards, and you don't automatically get it all up front in one lump sum. It's up to you to find a job on campus and work the hours to get that money. That is best used to cover your living expense, some of your living expenses. And then finally, the student loans, you can borrow federal student loans or private student loans. We always recommend that you consider the federal student loans before private. Federal student loans have protections and benefits that private lenders do not offer, such as public service loan forgiveness, income-driven repayment, postponement, and the biggest one in the last 2 years, interest rates for federal student loans have been 0% due to the pandemic and the CARES Act that passed back in March of 2020. If you were in repayment during that time, you also haven't needed to make any payments on your student loans. And private lenders did not offer that same sort of benefit. So it's something to really think about when you are considering your borrowing when you leave school. I mentioned grants and scholarships, so I want to promote our resource, the AccessLex Law School Scholarship Data Bank. I have the link there on the screen. Use it, learn it, love it. It is basically a work of love that we did during the first year of COVID on my team. We searched all of the law schools in the country. We searched law firms. We searched all nonprofit organizations looking for scholarships that were awarded to law school students in the last couple of years. You can filter it to be as focused in on your needs as much as possible. It could be your ethnicity, it could be what type of law you want to practice, where you want to practice, where you come from, what school you graduated from. And you can find lots of free money in there. We have over 800 scholarships listed, and it changes every day. We do keep updating it absolutely daily to make sure it's as accurate as possible and include as many resources for you as possible as well. So get the free money so that you can lower how much you have to borrow. And when you are hopefully getting acceptances to multiple law schools, you're going to want to make sure that you're doing a comparison of your offers that is comparing apples to apples. So you want to take a look at each school, list out all of the free money that you're receiving, subtract that out so you know what your out-of-pocket cost is, and then start thinking about how you're going to cover the remaining amount through loans, through other resources, what have you, but you want to make sure that you're comparing them apples to apples. So putting them into a chart like this will make it a lot easier for you when you are making those financial decisions. And like I said, we have to live with student loans. Let's just understand them a little bit better. For federal student loans, you need to complete the FAFSA. That's the free application for federal student aid. You do that on the federal student aid site, studentaid.gov. If you didn't previously complete your FAFSAs yourself, or mom and dad completed your FAFSAs while you're in school, this is the time to start doing it yourself. You can receive the direct unsubsidized loan just by completing the FAFSA. The Grad Plus loan will require that you complete the FAFSA and do a separate application, but it's just doing a credit check. It's not pulling your actual credit score. It's not looking at any debt to income ratio. It's just checking to make sure you don't have certain adverse credit history on your credit report. And then private loans will be a private application through that lender. Your borrowing limits for the direct unsubsidized loan is $20,500 per year. The direct Grad Plus loan will be what you already have for aid, including the unsubsidized loan, subtracting that out from your cost of attendance. And then whatever's remaining is how much you can borrow. So the cap is the cost of attendance. Private loans will set their own limits, but it can't be more than the cost of attendance for the school. Interest rates, they are set annually and are fixed. So if you plan to start law school in the fall of 2022, we don't know what the rates are going to be just yet, but they are set every July 1. And then private loans is going to depend on the type of loan that you have, whether and what their credit requirements are. So the more credit worthy you are, then it's going to have a lower interest rate. Well, that's how it's supposed to work. They might be fixed, they might be variable, so the rates will go up and down. And then repayment options are completely very transparent for the federal program. You have a lot of options. There's debt-driven options, there's income-driven options that will allow you to repay based on how much you make, not how much you borrowed. Private loans will give you whatever it is they offer. It's usually 2, maybe 3 options. And then forgiveness, specifically public service loan forgiveness, is only offered to federal student loans. They are not offered to private loans. Private loans would be subject to maybe forgiveness or a repayment program that you have with your employer, maybe a reimbursement program, but they aren't subjected to the other forgiveness programs that federal student loans have built in. I am going to give you a link to our Paying for Law School booklet. And this booklet is the companion piece for this presentation, and it'll help you when you are, I'm going to put it here in the chat panel. It's going to help you just kind of, everyone's a different type of learner, and it might help you in the event that you need to, you want to read through some of the stuff, digest it, or read it through and then ask some questions later. So you can always access that. There we go. And then just quickly, Max PreLaw is a program. It's completely free. We break it up into 4 different sections: applying to law school, choosing a law school, paying for law school, and then budgeting for law school. We have 4 specific presentations about that, and then other additional resources. And we also have coaching that we can also help you with. All of us on the team are accredited financial counselors. If you would like to register for Max PreLaw, go to askedna.accesslex.org. That's where all of our AccessLex educational resources are housed. And you sign up by just giving us your name, your email, your intended law school year, and you will be good to go. And you'll be able to access our Max PreLaw coaching, where you can sit down with one of us and have a 30-minute phone call as many times as you need, just to kind of chat about what it is that what those burning questions are. How are you going to make it work with these student loans? How can you adjust your budget? Different budgeting tactics. We go over strategies, and I like to say it's the best bang for your buck, because it's completely free, and you can do that as many times as you want. And when you transition into law school, you'll have access to Max coaching, which it will follow you through your law school program. And when you transition out, it'll also be available. So you always have an accredited financial counselor who specializes in working with law school students to help you through those questions that you have. And let's see, did we have any questions?
Yes, Ashley, we received one question that I'd love if you could tackle. Jace asks, what type of adverse credit histories are the federal loans looking for?
So adverse credit history for federal loans, they're looking to see if you've had a bankruptcy, a forbearance, not forbearance, foreclosure, a tax lien, and federal student loan default in the last couple of years. And they're also going to look for if you are past due on a different type of debt over 90 days past due on a debt that's over, it's like, it goes up with inflation, but it's around $2,600. So it's very select. And if for any reason you have any of those, you can still get approved. You can go back and appeal it, showing that you've fixed something, fixed that problem that's showing up on your credit report, or you can apply with an endorser, which is essentially like a cosigner.
Thank you so much. So for the audience, if there are any other questions you have for Ashley, we do have a few more minutes left during this session. But while you all are thinking up your last minute questions for Ashley, I really do want to impress upon you too that we, the law schools, are here to help you as well. I brought in the expert Ashley in order to talk about from a third party perspective, but we at each of our law schools have dedicated financial aid professionals, and this is exactly what they do. They are looking to talk to students to find ways to keep your debt burden low. That's a good thing for the law schools too. We want our students to have, lower than that 166,000 average student debt load when we graduate. So there are a plethora of counselors, both external to the law schools, a part of the law schools that you are applying to will be attending. So just know that more than anything, you actually have resources. Again, as a first generation graduate, my parents struggled with even trying to figure out how to file the FAFSA. And so, there wasn't a lot of help there, all the love and support in the world, but just not necessarily this level of financial literacy that I think everybody needs before you head to law school. So just know that there are professionals who deal with this day in and day out, and they can have really creative solutions, really great advice. My favorite piece of advice that I received was live like a law student when you're a law student, so you can live like a lawyer when you're a lawyer. But in the meantime, Ashley, it looks like we've got another question for you. So if the FAFSA only gives you a max of $20,500, how do you finance the rest of your tuition and cost of attendance? With the other loan options you've shown?
Exactly. So that's what the Grad Plus loan is there for, to take up the slack for the rest of those expenses, both your direct expenses with the law school itself, and then those living expenses.
Thank you. And this next question is from Casey. I'm actually going to take it given that at UConn we are an in-state school, and so residency most definitely impacts tuition prices. Casey asked, if you move to another state for school, when can you claim residency for lower in-state tuition? That's going to vary school by school. Oftentimes, the legislatures of those states set those rules. The Connecticut state rules are codified in statute, and for UConn, it's 1 year. So if you were to move here, this month, welcome to Connecticut, and then apply next year for fall 2023 enrollment, by that time you would be considered an in-state resident and therefore be able to take advantage of that lower in-state rate.
I want to thank you, Lauren, for inviting me today, and I do want to just echo what you said. Obviously, go to the financial aid offices of the law schools. They are a resource for you to talk through these situations. Any kind of questions you have about student loan financing, we are just an additional resource to help you along your financial path. We want you to feel empowered about your money, and before you choose a law school, you can work with us, or after you enter law school, because we likely offer our max program for free for law school students at your law school. We only have, I think, 5 or 6 that we don't at this point, but there's most out there. We're an available resource for you.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Fantastic information. Again, stuff I wish I would have had before law school, but I'm happy that we're passing it along to the next generation so that they are more educated. And before I pass the torch over to my colleague Anne to introduce the next session of our presentation, I do for 1 second want to harp on the external scholarships and particularly the AccessLex data bank that Ashley had mentioned. And the reason why I'm harping on it is because I've been doing this now for 8-9 years. And whenever I talked about external scholarships, it was always a little difficult where to point you to. You know, every law school had a little cache of scholarships that they posted online. There are websites like fastweb.com, FASTWEB, that you may end up already knowing because they service undergraduate external scholarships as well. But really, the link that Ashley just dropped into the chat, the AccessLex data bank, is the first comprehensive law school only external scholarship resource. And, you know, yes, a lot of these external scholarship programs, they're going to require that you do extra work, write a short essay on why do you want to go to law school? Why do you want to be a lawyer? But a pro tip, frankly, you're probably going to have to answer that question as part of your law school application process, maybe in your personal statement. And so you can frankly rework parts of your personal statement to apply to many of these external scholarship programs. And before anybody balks at the fact that, oh, you know, some scholarship programs are $1,000 here or $4,000 here. Well, by the time that interest compounds on that $4,000 loan that you would otherwise be taking out, you're looking at paying back a much larger rate. And just one more thing about external scholarships. I have a colleague, he's actually a dean of admissions at another law school, and his wife went to veterinary school. And if any of you are familiar with vet school, those tuitions are pretty high. And so with external scholarships, she was actually able to, she applied far and wide and she got half off. She found external scholarship opportunities that paid for half of her vet school tuition. So I'm telling you from real experience, you may feel, you know, like you're sending out these applications for external scholarships into the ether and never hearing back, but they do exist. Millions of dollars are left on the table, so it is a worthwhile endeavor. And so now I will get off my financial aid high horse, my scholarships high horse, but I really do believe this is important. Again, Ashley, thank you so much for all of the resources you've provided. And with that, I am going to pass the mic over to my colleague, Anne, to move us on forward to the next component of our Law Day presentation.
Thanks, Lauren. I just want to take a moment. Wow, that information about financing law school was so incredible. And I wish I had had that. I had, I'm going to say, zero financial literacy before I applied to law school. And as a single mom, part-time student who actually didn't graduate that long ago, that would have been like really, that's stunningly good information.